And I'm joined at the desk by John Anderson, Managing Director of Research and Product Development at Alexander Forbes, for more on the latest pension fund index. Good to have you with us as always, John.
Good afternoon, thank you very much.
A lot of explaining that you're going to have to do because I'm not an actuary, so we have to water down the information. But maybe let's look at this particular index and the reasoning behind it. Why do you actually do it in the first place?
Yeah, the Alexander Forbes Pensions Index is an initiative that we actually started about 3 years ago. And the reasoning behind it is we actually found that individuals in South Africa are not aware of whether they are on track for retirement or not.
Yeah.
They're either not saving, or if they are saving, they're not sure whether it's enough. So we started this index to really model typical savers in different age groups. And then we started them off back in 2000 to start tracking whether they would be on track for a reasonable retirement outcome. So the index actually tracks, it started off with 3 savers born in different years, and more recently we've introduced a new one for the new generation of savers that have just come out of varsity. That's exactly. And what it does is it starts off with an index value of 75, and what that means is that, and that's the benchmark. So it's the expected pension that you would receive at retirement. Let's say if you're now 20, in 40 years' time. So it's a future expected value. And 75 in this case means if your salary at just before you retire is 100 Rand, an index value of 75 means your pension that you will start receiving the next day will be a 75 Rand pension. And there's a lot of reasoning behind that that's typically used in the industry as a reasonable benchmark to aspire to, but it will be very different for different individuals. So for illustrative purposes, we track that, and over the last 10 years we've started to track how that expectation, that index has changed as markets have changed. Returns that you would typically get for a typical pension fund investor, would it go up, would it go down, as interest rates have changed, as salaries in South Africa, the wage bills have changed, because remember, your pension at retirement is it's relative to your lifestyle at retirement.
Yes.
So we actually factor in that, and it then comes out with the end value, and we release the index quarterly to see how people are doing.
It's interesting you mentioned the different elements that obviously come into play here. Market performance on the graph here, you look at 2007, 2008, even 2009, and you see that there is a slight dip as to what the outcomes are from an investment perspective. But how does this information help you advise your clients accordingly?
Well, firstly, it creates awareness, especially for people that are on what is called defined contribution plans. Now, defined contribution plan is where you are contributing towards a retirement fund, either a pension, a provident fund, could be a retirement annuity, and you're contributing, saving towards that. But then what does that mean? Am I on track?
Yeah.
So this is the first start of a tool to say, this is what the general trends are out there, to create awareness. And the index is actually showing that for the general saver over the last 10 years, they might have been on track 10 years ago, but today the pension expectations have dropped dramatically. And the reasons for that are that interest rates have come down, expected future returns that you would get. So whilst it's good that the markets have come up, as you talked about earlier, the fact is future expected returns are lower, and that means your future expected pension is down. And the intention is then to prompt individuals to say, if that's what's happening generally, let's provide you with your individual assessment and see how you individually are doing. So it's a tool to just create general awareness, and I think it is working, because we have seen, since the introduction of the index over the last year, we've seen generally the people that we've analyzed have started increasing their contribution rates. So we started off with people generally increasing at about at a contribution rate of 13.5%. For many years that was fixed. Over the last 12 to 24 months, we've gradually started seeing a slight improvement because of firstly lower costs in the industry. It's happening because of retirement reform, etc. But also people generally starting to save more. Very slowly, I'd admit, but a 1 percentage point change has actually happened, which is, in my mind, quite positive. So it's awareness, but we use it to then say, let's look at you individually, because each individual is different, and then also help them, if they speak to a financial planner, what plan you can put in place if you aren't on track to actually get to that desired result.
Let's get into that number that you mentioned, 75 obviously being the basis point there. You mentioned that the results look slightly more drastic or not as positive. Has that gone down, and how significantly, to what number?
It has gone down, so, and it depends on what age group you're in, and it also therefore how long you've invested and when you expect to retire. So people that are up for retirement now, that have saved throughout their lifetime, have benefited from the markets over the last 20, 30, 40 years in South Africa. Actually, we see that they're still reasonably on track for retirement. It has still come down for them because the cost of retirement has it's become more costly. But their index value is generally reduced to about a 65, which means where they could have got a pension of 75, now it's 65. But still, it's you know, there are still things that one can do there. There's a more dramatic impact for people that are in the younger generation.
Yes.
And the reason for that is they're now investing in a market where the future expected returns are lower. They have not benefited on this great bull market that we've had, and we've heard about, you know, new highs in the market. They haven't invested in that. And for them, the index value is at the lowest is close to 40. And what that actually means, and that 40 means that even if you save for the 30, 40 years at those current rates, it's still not going to be sufficient.
Even with the power of compound interest?
Even with the power of compound interest.
No ways, John.
And the reason for that is that, you know, again, people are living longer, and it means that the contribution rates that you have to pay today is more than it was in the past. And also, you know, the index itself factors in, it doesn't factor in another bull market in the next 40 years. So it's a planning tool. If there is, you know, great returns, obviously the prospects could be better. But generally, you know, future generations are likely to have to retire later, save more, or, you know, work part-time in retirement, which is a reality and is happening.
John,
as we speak today.
Do you think I can still do this job at 70?
I think you should be able to.
Let's hope so, because clearly young ones clearly need to save a lot more, like you say. Thank you so much for your time today and educating us, and hopefully a lot of you at home will heed this call to obviously make sure you plan for your retirement appropriately. A big thank you once more to John Anderson. He's the Managing Director of Research and Product Development at Alexander Forbes.